Hello and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. I'm April Perry, and if you're new here, we help people who are overwhelmed by the details of life to create simple systems so they can do what matters most. And today we are featuring an interview that Eric and I did with Sharon Eubank, the author of one of my new favorite books, Doing Small Things with Great Love. I've been following Sharon's work for years and years, and she's literally one of my best friends. Even though this is the first time we've actually spoken to one another for more than 5 minutes, but I just love her. She's the director of a global humanitarian organization that has donated billions of dollars and coordinated millions of volunteer hours in more than 190 countries. But in addition to that, she's one of my heroes because she has a sincere love for all people. She specializes in building common ground, and she exemplifies so many beautiful characteristics that I would one day love to develop. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the podcast, and then I'll share more at the end, but please make sure to visit our show notes page to learn more about the special book promotion / fundraiser match / giveaway we're hosting here at Learn, Do, Become to celebrate the launch of her book. So you can visit learndobecome.com / episode 305, and I'll tell you more about it at the end as well. Welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here, Sharon.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I have secretly wanted to be mentored by you for years and years and years, and I wrote down the question that I wanted to ask you, which essentially was, how do I take my desire to serve and make it as effective as possible? And I know other people feel the same way because in the beginning of your book, you had this quote that said, "I've become sensitized to the pent-up desire so many feel to give of themselves and help others with something useful and honorable. And I also have a sense of the fear or self-criticism many have that what they offer will never be enough to make a difference." And when I read that, I thought, okay, I'm not alone. She's already written a whole book on it. I can't wait to help promote the book. And I know that people here at Learn to Become who are trying to get organized and trying to prioritize their families and trying to do something good in a world that often feels so full of hate and fighting and chaos. I know that they're looking for answers to this question too. So I'm just going to turn it over to you now to answer that question for us.
Well, just to give her a moment extra to think, I actually loved how she ended the book as well. This last summarizing chapter of her book, she says, "This book was my attempt to demonstrate these principles."
Yeah.
So a lot of things that Sharon will share here. I love how this book really is an encapsulation of a lot of what we'll talk about and share here. And I'll share a couple more, one or two more quotes from the end of the book I love. But I love how she has taken a lot of her experience and her thoughts and summarized them in an amazing book.
Really fun discussion.
It's so funny. I never thought that I would write a book. This is kind of a new thing for me, but I've worked in the humanitarian industry for 28 years, and they said, "How did you come up with the 12 principles for the book?" They're the mistakes I made. These are mistakes that I have made in my career that I wished I had known earlier. And so I wanted to put those in form of a principle so that all the people who feel like you and Eric and everybody else, we want to do something meaningful. We want to do something good. There's so much opportunity, and yet we feel overwhelmed, or we get stymied, or we make a mistake and we don't know how to fix it. And so this really was about, here's some principles that I think work. And I put 92 stories in the book. So here's 92 examples of people who are doing it well or not doing it well. And because I only learn by stories, I am defective in that way, but I have to see the example. And I wanted it to be really practical. So that's why I started.
Well, the stories that you share are so helpful, and I had some huge insights. The three that I put together for this specific podcast that we'll kind of walk through is, first, that being a humanitarian is less about money and more about connection. Number two was this concept that you are the gift, like where you are the most helpful, and in what you already know and who you are. And then number three was that exchange and sustainability are important in any type of humanitarian work. So we'll kind of go through some of those, but I also loved that at the beginning, you talk about this idea of, what many will call the golden rule, how it's in so many different religions and cultures and philosophies. that we want to even love our enemies the way that we would want to be
Yeah.
loved and treated.
Yeah, I love it. It's actually the very beginning of the book. She sets this common ground for all of us. I love how Sharon, you put in 17 different faith, religious, and philosophical traditions that all have a version or element of this beautiful golden rule. So,
And is that, I guess, what you've found has helped you to build common ground? Because that's one of the things I think that you are best in the world at is being able to collaborate with people who might come from a different background than you, and honestly respecting them, learning from them, and feeling this ability to build common ground. So I'd love to hear more on that.
You have this community that's so powerful, more than 100,000 people that are thinking about go, do, become. But
Mhm.
our culture, our society is trying to chop up us up into little tiny boxes. You
Mhm.
believe a certain way, you vote a certain way, and because of that, I can't have anything to do with you. Almost this canceling out of if you
Yeah.
feel differently than I do, I can't have anything to do with you. And
Mhm.
that's a very different philosophy than what this country was founded on and really what makes people progress. I
Yeah.
think the whole idea about progress is to say, you look differently than I do, you vote differently, you worship differently, and I don't care about that because we have something in common. So one of the main questions about the book was, what are the things that we have in common?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found really powerful was this idea about the golden rule of treat other people the way you want to be treated, or conversely, don't treat other people the way you don't want to be treated.
Yeah.
And that goes through every faith, every history, and has some version of that. And that was really motivating to me as we're looking for something in common. So if we don't agree on some of those things, we can at least agree on treating other people the way we want to be treated. And
yeah.
there's some other binding things. There's sports, there's music, there's food, there's service. Those kinds of things are common ground that we can build on. But for sure, we're most motivated by our convictions and our faith. And the golden rule was one of those I thought was great.
Yeah. I actually love a little part, not to tip it up too much, but there's one of your colleagues you'd mentioned about how you had said to her directly to kind of just set this relationship. There's about 75% of things I don't agree with you on or see eye to eye on, but there's 25% where we have some common ground and
I still like
I
you,
can
right?
learn from all of it. I still like you, right? So despite all of our seeming differences, right? We may not agree on everything. There are so many ways to create those connections and that respect and rapport. So I love that part.
Yeah, I have to give credit. That's Pamela Atkinson, who's a great, she's an elder in her Presbyterian church. She's a fantastic advocate for the unhoused in Utah. And she'll say to a legislator, I disagree with you 75% of the time, but I'm still your friend. I still like you. And that has been the key to her success as she's gotten bipartisan support. So I think that that's a great example.
Love it.
What I really, that's what I want all of us to be when you think about what we want to create. And as I was reading the book, I've annotated most of your book. I had Eric go through all my notes and
It's
things
well
like
marked.
that.
It's well loved.
But I wrote what in one of the pages, I wrote world peace, like had an arrow, pointing to the section. Because really, in the work that you do, where you have been on the ground, you have been coordinating shipments and organizations coming together. And every time there's a disaster in the world, I think of you and I think, oh, I bet that she is really working with her network and people doing these amazing things. And I mean, just as a little side note, it gives me a lot of hope to know that there's someone like you who cares deeply about people, who's helping to channel resources to the places where they're going to do the most good. Like that just means a lot.
You
Absolutely.
have to know I'm the focal point for a lot of other people's work, and I'm sort of out in the front and I'm getting credit for work that other people do. But the idea that there is a network working on issues and problems is really encouraging to me.
Yeah.
And I started a little section in the book. If you go back and try and look at how much aid has gone into a certain place on the earth. If you pick Africa, for example, about $2 trillion has gone into solving problems in Africa. But Africans will tell you that rather than helping, it has corrupted their systems because we've pumped so much money into it. And it's become a corrupting influence, or it's become a non-self-reliance issue that people are just available. And I can go get aid rather than figuring out my long-term self-reliant issue. And
Yeah.
that's not just in Africa, that's in the United States, that's a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And one of the key learnings for me is the money isn't the factor.
Yeah.
The factor of whether it's successful or not successful is the idea of a trusted network. In other words, a group of people who have energy around this issue.
Mhm.
They're not corrupt and they're holding each other accountable. If you have a group like that, or if you can develop a group like that,
Mhm.
and then you put the resource through it, it does what it's supposed to do. And
Mhm.
so rather than focusing on we don't have enough money, we should get more money, we should be focused on we don't have enough trusted networks. What can we do to increase the number of trusted networks? And
Mhm.
these aren't, corporations or organizations. This is your PTSA. This is your HOA. This is your reading group. This is the people you run with. These are the small grassroots organizations that know where everybody lives, that know everybody's names.
Yeah.
They're the people who affect change. And those are the people we should be trying to support. But unfortunately, we think the issue is about money and not about that network. So
Mhm.
one of the main points of the book was, what can we do to increase the power or the trust among those networks in forces that are trying to break them apart? There's a lot of forces right now that are trying to break us apart. And I'm really energized around that. There are some examples in the book, but I would really love people to share other examples. I hope that this is the beginning of a conversation. What do you see in your own community where trusted networks work, and how can we support them and encourage them?
Well, that of course that was my first lesson because what I had thought in my mind was, okay, when I asked Sharon how I can be most helpful, I thought she would say, okay, there's this one charity, and if you put your money into this charity, it's going to solve, all the problems of the world. But when I started reading your book and realizing it was less about money and more about that connection, like there's some great quotes from your book. One of them said, no one is too poor, too disabled, too marginalized, too street weary, or too anything else to contribute something of value to society. Like that idea of dignity and bringing people together and having that connection, those networks. And actually, it reminded me, so Eric and I, we do work with some nonprofit organizations, and our Arise membership helps fund some awesome things that we've done. But what I realized is the reason I love these organizations we're working with is because they're doing it this way.
Yeah.
They're doing it with this connection. For example, we went with this Mentors International. We went and visited 10 different entrepreneurs that were in Nairobi, and we just were there a few months ago, and they provide mentorship where they have a mentor who will have maybe 50 mentees. They do education and training, and they used to do micro lending, but now they focus just on the mentorship because they found we often don't even need money. It's a matter
Or
of,
they found local banks in each country who will
yes.
give the same favorable terms and interest rates, so their money can be utilized to provide the training, the mentoring, which is more the necessity than the money, right? So the money can be well used.
Yes, but as we were meeting these people, it was maybe they did need like money for a sewing machine or money for a new storefront sign or something like that. But it was these principles that they're learning through this continued mentorship of maybe starting work a little earlier or maybe being a little more clear about what you're offering or learning how you can adjust your prices or just even so many of the people there were talking about keeping your personal and your business finances separate. They just didn't know how to do that. And as we were there visiting with these entrepreneurs, it was just this beautiful experience. And because we're seeing them, starting a tailor shop or starting,
And
selling
they're just glowing. They're so excited. And they're telling their neighbors in the shops
job.
how to do what they're doing, right? It's like this collaborative, expansive help they give each other.
Yeah, and the what's Eric's role there?
Country
The
director.
country director. He's an entrepreneur as well, and he said, there have been some organizations who would just give thousands of dollars to an entrepreneur and think that was going to solve it, but the money would just evaporate, and then they had nothing.
Yeah.
And when we actually show them how to do it, it makes this difference. But I'm noticing it's this network. Um, I also was wondering if you could just explain to our Learn to Become community about you call it like the second disaster that often follows
It can be
a,
so sad.
yeah, but this was eye-opening to me because in my mind, I thought, okay, money that goes in and buys supplies and delivers supplies, like that's how you solve problems. But when you shared about the second disaster, I thought, wow, I really need to think about where I'm putting effort and energy to make sure it doesn't cause this problem. So I'll turn to you.
I felt bad including these examples in the book because they're so devastating. They're just emotionally devastating because we've all done this thing. But in the humanitarian sector, there's this term called the second disaster, where a disaster happens and people hear about it on the news. Their hearts are touched, they want to do something, and so they make a decision. I bet they need teddy bears or water or
Yeah.
clothing or something like
Refrigerators.
refrigerators. And then they send those things. They go to all the expense to package them up and send them, but they arrive at a time when the people aren't ready to receive them. They arrive in such volume that they clog up the runways and they take space in warehouses, or there's just no place to put them. So they just put them, on the beach or someplace. And then it either diverts attention away from the disaster itself to go deal with all of those things, or they can't deal with it and it rots. I told the story in there about in the Southeast Asia tsunami, things kept coming on the planes because from all over, and they just put them on a beach and they sat there in the tropical sun. Nobody had time to really deal with them, and they just moldered into something of a toxic mess. And the health department came along and said, this can't stay here. And so they doused it with kerosene, they set it on fire, they put it out in the ocean. I think of all the good intentions and all the work that got to it, but it wasn't what they needed at the right time.
Right. Because all the drives, right? All the people doing stuff back home, making things and putting stuff in bags and
Yeah.
containers and just building up this mass that wasn't what they needed. And I think you've referenced several times through the book about sourcing things locally. It's
Yeah.
less expensive. It starts drawing in. It's that pull mechanism, right? As opposed to the push mechanism that Clayton Christensen talks about. And just establishing things. I mean, not necessarily in the case of a disaster, but in other situations, working within the environment and knowing, what the resources are there.
The premier skill of being a humanitarian, and it's so easy to understand, but it's so hard to do, is to ask people what they want. Don't assume, don't bring in your program and try and find somebody to do it. Ask the people what they want. And then when should it come? What help do you want from me? And asking a series of questions is the premier skill. And we know it. We know it in our hearts, we know it in our heads. It's just so hard to follow because we think we know what people need, or it's too inconvenient to sit down
Right.
with them and have the conversation.
Well, I don't want to get too out of sequence here, but can I like maybe steal one of your stories or share it here, like spoil it, I guess.
Please
Spoil.
do. Please do.
Well, I mean, just this point about the things we learn from our own mistakes, right? And this whole idea of asking the question and listening. I love, near the beginning, you share this story of an Italian who goes into Africa and especially in Nambia, and they are going to go in and show them agriculture, how to grow and raise things because their ground's so fertile, right? And so they go and they plant all these watermelons and other things, and they start growing until the season gets to the point where they're ready for harvest. And then one morning they wake up and all the watermelons are completely gone and destroyed because the hippopotami just came out of the river. And we've seen this in Kenya. Like they will come up on the land and they will consume everything.
Like tomatoes they eat.
Was it tomatoes or watermelons?
Tomatoes.
It was tomatoes. Okay. It was like, and then he's like, why didn't you tell us? Well, you never asked, right? And I love that punchline. And it's that whole idea, just ask what's needed. Like, don't think you know everything and just ask. And I think it applies even locally. Just look around and ask locally what's needed. Because I love the title of your book. I mean, doing small things with great love. And I just will interject one last thing here. Is like someone's listening to the podcast right now, one of our Learn to Becomers or whoever you may be. We invite you to think about what's something small that you can do with great love where you're at, or something you have a direct ability to influence. And as we go through this conversation, maybe other ideas will rise to you. I love at the end of the book, Sharon actually gives 50 prompts to get started. That was one of my favorite, like just all these like brainstorming ideas that one or two may just resonate with you. But just realize that so much of the good we can do is in our local areas. But it's with this eye of how do we use our natural gifts, asking and looking around and getting input from around us to be able to do the right thing in the right way. And it can be, I love how it's small with great love. Start small. And the last thing I'll share, and then I'll stay out of the conversation a lot more. April's like, no, you won't. The last quote I love is she said, the individuals I wrote about weren't afraid to try something and then improve it. That's how everything meaningful starts. And I just love that because you don't have to start something perfectly or well or know everything or not make a mistake. But as you do and as you go along, I think we can learn and grow and improve our abilities to be serviceable, to be humanitarian. So I will make an end now.
You're a better pitch for the book than I am, Eric.
It's an incredible book. If
He's a
our
great
listeners
champion.
if our listeners haven't heard of it or seen it yet, go pick one up. We highly, highly recommend it.
If I could just add to something
Yeah,
that you
please.
said, because we discount sometimes the thing that we have that is the most valuable to people. We think that we need to give them things.
Right.
But when I talk to people who have been resettled in my community here in Salt Lake City, the thing they miss most, even though they need somebody to drive them to their doctor's appointment and they're in an English class with somebody and they're getting vocational training, all those things are important. But the thing they really want is a friend. They want somebody to invite to dinner or call them up and say, I don't understand this letter I just got in the mail. Or just, I have a new grandbaby, or my mother has breast cancer. They need the emotional support more than any of the physical things. And it doesn't cost any money. All of us can do that to varying degrees. It's the thing they want the very most. And I've thought so much about that because it's much easier to drop off a casserole, a hygiene kit. I've made it, I've done it, and now it's you do it. But
Yeah.
the ongoing relationship, which is harder, you have to invest in that. But it's the thing that's the most valuable to people.
I love that.
Well, and this, both of you, this folds perfectly into, lesson number two, which we were sharing, talking about this concept that you are the gift and that the free work that we do, it might seem less valuable because it's relatively easy, call someone on the phone, be a friend to them, be available. It feels kind of too easy. But I love this concept that we are most helpful where we are. And
Mhm.
there was one quote that you shared. It's on page 39. I have them all referenced. I'll put this on the show notes page. But said, of course, it is harder to work where you live. It's harder because we understand the dynamics and real barriers that may be invisible to us in unfamiliar cultures and places. And I thought, oh, that is an aha because it feels easy. Like if I take this kit and I send it to this place, everyone's just happy with
It's
kits there.
magically going to change the world.
It's
Magically.
not that kits are bad or right, any of this, but it was just the idea. Do you want to expand a little bit more on that concept that you are the gift?
Well, Eric told the story about teaching the Zambians how easy it is for agriculture. Don't you know agriculture, this ground is so fertile but without ever understanding there are barriers, including hippopotami that go along with this that you never knew about.
Hmm.
And I think that's true when we come into a no culture and we don't understand all those dynamics. It looks so clean. It looks so easy if they would just do this. When
Yeah.
we work in our own settings and we understand the culture and the dynamics and the history and what was tried already before, it feels messy. And so we don't want to engage in there. We're going to go somewhere where it looks cleaner. But the truth is, it's never cleaner there. And we're not designed to understand it because we're coming from the outside of the culture.
Mhm.
So this idea that we are most powerful where we live because we are there all the time, because we speak the culture, because we understand the language we use, those are critically important resources that we shouldn't squander and go off and do something that's far away where we'll only be there for a week or two. There's nothing wrong with those trips because we learn about people and we exchange, but you're not going to solve poverty over there. But
Yeah.
you might be able to do something impactful where you are in your own
Okay.
home.
So I have a very personal question on this because this is one of those areas that I am struggling with a little bit. I feel like a lot of my skills and maybe my natural activities are things like, we have a podcast, we have a YouTube channel, I'm helping people get out of overwhelm. So I'm reading books and sharing books I like, and I'm, doing a lot of stuff like that online. Or I'm doing basic things like serving in my church. I work with the organization for children. Or I'm, doing things for a neighbor, like chatting with a neighbor who might be lonely that day or whatever. But sometimes I feel like those efforts aren't maybe addressing the deepest suffering in the world. So I feel like it's not as like I feel like I'm still lacking if I'm not serving the people who are suffering so much. So, and I know I'm probably seeing it off. I'm probably off. So I would love to just hear
So
your
does it feel like you
perspective
don't
on
feel like you're enough or doing enough or reaching the deepest need?
this can't possibly be enough. I can't be like, well, I'm the gift,
So you're not reaching people in Calcutta who Mother Teresa was ministering to.
Yes, like the people who are like dying right now, I'm not helping them. And so sometimes I just feel like, oh, this doesn't really count. I don't know.
What you just said, I've had that same experience, and I think a lot of people have. I tell a story in the very beginning of the book. I came home, this was in the 90s, and my mom was knitting these slippers, these red slippers. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, there's an airlift to Sarajevo, and I'm going to put some slippers in there. And I thought, I'm in probably 30 years old. What good is that? They have just had ethnic cleansing. These women have lost their husbands, and you're knitting. What good is that? In the face of so much trouble. But I didn't say that aloud to my mother. She put the slippers in there. But about 4 or 5 years after that, I read in the New York Times an account of a woman who was living in Sarajevo. The buildings had been bombed out, the pipes had broken and then frozen, so there's just frozen water everywhere. They were so cold. And she said they didn't have enough food. They were scared all the time that more bombs were coming. And she said it was so hard. And a Red Cross truck came in and they had new socks, new woolen socks that they passed out that day. And she said her feet were filthy. She hadn't had, very good, I think she had tights on that she took off with holes. But she put on those new pair of socks and they felt like she was human, that somebody had cared enough about her somewhere to recognize that there was this need and that they responded to her. And she said, then I thought, we couldn't solve the war that day. It's not going to get solved that day. And I can't do anything about the broken building or the broken pipes, but I can do this one thing that is very meaningful to her. And so I did that thing, or somebody did that thing. My mother did that thing because she sent the slippers, which was exactly what was needed at the right time.
Mhm.
And so I think we get overwhelmed by, I have to stop the war in Yugoslavia. And that can't happen on that day. But what can happen on that day is that a woman receives the very thing that she needed at the right time from another woman or another person.
Mhm.
And so those small acts, when they're the right acts at the right time, they make somebody feel valued, feel human, and they do make a difference. And small acts, if we link them all up together, eventually Yugoslavia got addressed. But we can participate in that. We can contribute to that if we understand the principles of how to do the right thing, and then we do them, even if they're small.
Right. That was absolutely one of my favorite stories. If I hadn't read the time lapse between it, I wanted to think it was your mom's socks they were getting off and giving to that lady in that time. It's such a sweet story. And it just reminded me of like one of my favorite Martin Luther King quotes. It's everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love.
Right.
And so I just encourage again those listening be thinking, what is something small, simple, but you can do with great love?
Well, and maybe, and I'm loving all this. I think maybe just one follow-up question to it. I feel like, for example, here at Learn, Do, Become, we're able to serve a community and generate some pretty great funds to be able to do things. We helped with a Village Impact, helping to fund a classroom for a school in Kenya. The government works with them, donates the land, the people there do the building.
It's one of
It's
these
a
net,
lot of exchange.
it's one of these
It's a
networks
network.
you described. These organizers actually went in and are working with the governments and the government in one county, only one county, because they don't want to be too
They
spread
kind
out.
of go deep in this
And they
one.
found a county that has this kind of
Community involvement.
integrity more than anything. And then they pick schools whose communities, whose administrators, teachers, and parents are fully vested. So it becomes this kind of trilateral network. And in each school, they hold each other accountable as additional resources slowly are
Mhm.
infused, but they're doing most of the work themselves. Like it's this amazing model.
So being able to be there and we got to meet these parents and how much the school meant, and they're all just contributing in beautiful ways. And the PTA runs the lunch program and the parents all contribute. Like it's beautiful. And that feels big and that feels like, okay, that's like a deep need. But then I'm also doing some smaller things, obviously, like I'm taking photos and of my going through all my mom's journals and taking photos of like favorite parts and sharing them with my siblings because I want them to like feel her love for God and her love for life, right? So it's a very different kind of thing. But do you feel like as you're deciding where do I put my time and energy, how do you decide? Do you feel like it's based on maybe inspiration, what you feel like God wants you to do? Do you try to meter it out where some of it's big and some of it's small? Like,
Or do you play to
think of
preferences or like person? I'm sure she thinks so. Like,
this work these other people. I just feel
or do you sometimes like play to like your strengths? I've heard a lot of people say, go with what your strengths and gifts and abilities are, right? I mean, there's inspiration, there's where's the need, it's where's the
like, there's so
abilities.
many options. Like, how do you?
So Sharon, how do we choose?
You talked about the Go Do Become community, and because I'm the global director of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to me, those kind of communities that are bonded together, those are examples of what individual people can do at scale. Organized religion is powerful because it's organized.
Yeah.
And a community like Go Do Become you're organized around so that you can take small contributions and do something big with that, and you can make that community, and it's organized and scaled to do something much bigger than just individual people. And that's it's so energizing to hear the examples about what you're doing and see the examples from my own organization. But I believe that if people only do those, contribute to those larger organizational scaled things, we miss out on the joy of doing, if you want to call it humanitarian work or ministering work or the work of neighborliness,
Yeah.
around us.
Yeah.
And the way I choose, I guess I use two things. I believe people, I believe that I'm in a circle with other people for a reason, and
Mhm.
that we are able to help each other for a reason. So I look to my circle, the people that I am physically and geographically near, because I feel like there's purpose in that. And then because I'm a person of faith, I just want to ask God, what do you want me to do? I don't hear you perfectly, but if you'll point me in a direction, I'll follow through. And I've had amazing experiences that way of things I would never have chosen to do myself. And so I think balancing what you can do in conjunction with other people, organized to scale, and then what you can do in your personal ministry, the things that you can do just heart to heart and eye to eye. I think the balance of those two things is a full life.
That is
That was
excellent.
such a good answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, because even you were mentioning in the book things like birthdays. It feels like a birthday comes around every 20 seconds. There's like someone having a birthday. But when you remember someone's birthday, or if there's a special birthday, or when it's your birthday, you kind of really know who your friends are because they're the ones who are always calling you on your birthday or reaching out or at least like thinking of you. And that little thing might not seem like a big deal, but that's part of feeling that connection, right?
That's true.
Well, I love that local and personal kind of focus you have, Sharon, because not that we do anything for the payoff, but it is very sweet and rewarding to see something you're doing helping make a difference on an ongoing basis. And I think it's also you're maybe more attuned. 'Cause like on these international trips or things like that, we're doing good. We're sending money or resources and things are happening. And but I think if you can see the ongoing effect and actually not so much for the payoff for yourself, but to be there, like you said, on that consistent basis over time for the conversation or the support or giving a ride, I think that, I mean, if again, if the whole world would do this, these little acts, I mean, it's this whole concept of paying it forward, right? That gets geometrically big very fast, and the world becomes a
Mhm.
much happier, much more peaceful place. So that was beautiful advice you gave.
I could have called the book a lot of different things, but I settled on this quote from Mother Teresa. She said, "We can't all do great things, but we can all do, small things with great love." And I think about her ministry in India. They couldn't change the fact that people were going to die. What their administration isn't going to change the fact that those people are dying, but they can wash them, they can put them in clean sheets, they can write their last letters, they can hold their hand, they can make sure that they're not alone when they die. And to me, those are real human things. There are a lot of things in this world we can't change. We're not going to solve, some of these big things, but we can human to human make sure that people aren't alone and that have encouragement and help. And those small things done with great love in the end, I think mean more than some of the big things that we work on. Because as you pass from this life into the next life, those are the things you remember. The other things fall away, but you remember the grace and the love that somebody shared with you. And so it's why I chose that as the title. And I mean, it's humanitarian, and Mother Teresa is going to be the best there.
It's a beautiful
Well,
title.
I felt very empowered reading your book, and that was one of the reasons I was so excited to share it with our community here because you give us very specific things to do, but also just ways to think about it that make you feel excited. Like we talk about waking up excited and going to bed content. That's kind of like our gold standard here at Learn to Become. But the thing is, I love the concept that when you can actually do a very specific thing that doesn't feel that hard to you, but that does go outside yourself, that you are building on something. And I want to just kind of jump to just lesson number 3, which is talking about this concept of exchange and sustainability. And what you shared in the books, the stories that you shared really changed my perspective or gave me a better filter, I guess I could say, on how to choose which projects to work on. Which projects, first of all, create an exchange. Like you'd shared a story, someone had, I don't remember whose story it was, but where a employer was throwing money out at an employee party, and then all the employees were like groveling for money, and how that just there's no dignity in that. And someone's father was like standing on the side, like, I'm not gonna
Mhm.
go do a money grab. But that a lot of time charitable work can feel like that. Like, oh, we're throwing out a bunch of stuff hoping people will come receive it. But I love that you focus on this exchange, like in what people are learning and experiencing, and something that can be sustained. Can you share a little more on that?
Yeah. I heard a woman talk. She had come back from a church volunteer experience in India. She and her husband were from Idaho. And India was completely different than anything they'd ever experienced. It was the density was difficult, the smells were difficult. She said I had to stop from reacting because I just wasn't used to such strong smells. And she kept writing back to her family this phrase, they have nothing. They just have nothing. And she was reacting to the poverty that she felt like she was experiencing there. She was at church one Sunday, and an Indian woman came up to her and she said, we feel so sorry for you. What can we do to help you? And she said, you feel sorry for me? She said, yes. She said, why do you feel sorry for me? And she said, well, number one, you're fat. She said you wear clothes that are so restricting in the heat. And she said, it just makes you so miserable. And I saw that picture that you showed about your family, and there was nobody in your house, all that space, but nobody to share it with. And she just felt so bad about that. And the woman realized that she had been reacting to, oh, they have dirt floors and three generations of the family live in this tiny little space. And they're looking at her space and thinking, oh, she's so alone. It's so sad. This woman, she said, I know you don't have any family here. Let us be your Indian family. We'll invite you over. We're going to cook. We're going to teach you our recipes. And as she related this to me, she said, I was impoverishing them with my judgment of how poor they were, that they have nothing. And yet in the end, they had all this friendship, all this tradition, all this joy that they wanted to share with me. And so when they invited me in, we had this exchange. She said, I will never say that again, that they have nothing.
Mm.
They may not have the same physical things that I do, but every person has the dignity of who they are and the fun, the humor, the joy of the exchange of just being who we are. And that story really caught me off guard because it's easy to judge people of I have this, they don't have that, without ever recognizing we all have different things and we all need each other for different things, and we're going to exchange. So it's okay to go to Peru for your week because
Yeah.
you may not solve the poverty, but you are exchanging with the people and you're both getting rich out of that experience. And
That's how I felt in our trip to Kenya this summer. They had a school, like a celebration, kind of the opening of it, and we got to do community visits, and we were there for a few days. And we had like a campsite by the school, and there was a woman named Daisy who became my best friend
They
that
became
whole
like my
time.
soul sister the whole time we were there.
Well, we were all planting flowers, and I was using the tool. I don't know what the tool was called, but I was not using it well,
Like
trying
a
to.
hoe type
Yeah.
spade.
And she comes over, she says, might I assist you? And I said, sure. And she shows me how to actually use it.
We
And
had grandmothers out there out landscaping and working us. We were like,
so good.
what?
And then she was my buddy. Every time we had a get together, she was right by my side. She showed me how they peel their potatoes. She showed me the beans, how they would harvest them. As we're walking around, they let me carry a water barrel. Like they showed me how they have
One
a
of those,
fabric
yeah, one of
like
their
headband that holds the water
like the
barrel
jerry can and just working that with
so
their
I could walk with it. I mean, they were teaching me these skills,
and
and
also like in their kitchens, like how to blow the fire and
she
get
let
it
me
going.
blow on her
And
fire.
she's like assessing all of our skills. She didn't say this, but like you're horrible. You would die here.
Like I didn't have any of those skills. They build their own homes, they do their own farming, they make all their own food. Like they're amazing. And there was actually a moment we were walking through the communities, and got my phone had a notification pop up from Instacart. They were like selling me something, and I thought, okay, I'm really embarrassed because I have groceries that show up on my porch, but I don't know how to make them or how to grow them or how to cook them like from scratch like these people do. And it was such this beautiful we were friends, we were having fun, and I felt just so appreciative of them. And also as we sat at the school celebration, it was like 4 hours. We did singing and dancing and activities, but their children and adults are able to sit for 4 hours and participate,
Mhm.
where here in America,
digitally
even 20
distracted,
minutes,
and after
people are,
minutes we're done.
I was just so impressed with them and just thought, okay, like I want more of what they have to bring. It's not just this
Yeah.
one way thing, you
Well,
know.
just real quick, Sharon, to your point about feeling sorry and they have nothing, like we could have gone in and said, oh, they have nothing. But if you dropped Kenyans and us Americans on native ground, Instacart doesn't work so well. And they're like, they should feel very sorry for us. You have no skills. You have nothing you can bring to the table here and help survive. So it
Yeah.
is that exchange. I love that.
Yeah. I I was at the Salvation Army last Saturday and we were serving the noon meal. And the Salvation Army, they work with people who have run out of options. They don't have other options. These are very rough people who've been living on the street. And they all come in for their lunch. And my job was to take the plate of lunch and hand it over the counter to the people that were there. And I tried really hard to just look in their eyes. And, they're suffering, from addictions and from the rough living on the street and the lack of relationships in their family. But as I handed it to them, I tried to look in their eyes and just say, here you go, or thanks, or hope you have a good day. And I was surprised. Lots of people looked down. They didn't want to engage with me, but lots of people wanted to say, God bless you. Thank you for this. So appreciate that you're here. So glad I came. There was this little exchange, the back and forth. And I'm addicted to that little exchange because we exchange little bits of divinity in those moments. And I wish we had more of them in our society. And I think we can create more of them.
I love that. Um, I know we could talk all day. I want people to buy the book. You need to buy the book because it's so good. I went through it. I probably took like 5 days to read it because I didn't want to rush it, but I
Mm.
wanted to, go through each chapter and just do a little at a time and take all my notes and things like that. But there was just one more thing I wanted to share. I mean, so good. Literally, there's so much, so much
Every
good.
morning for 5 days, our morning walk talks were
I kept
all
kidding.
like where she was going
Sharon's
in the
book is
book.
so good,
It
Eric.
was so much
I
fun.
know, it's so good. But there's one part I love. It's kind of all one of the things I'll kind of end on and give you some time to close up. But I love what you said. When I am overwhelmed like this, you're referring to the situation. You said two things help me. Sorry, I will give a little more context. She said, when I'm overwhelmed, for example, all the things I can't solve, right? The bigger political, the wars, the stuff you can't change. I go small. I cannot stop the war in Sudan, but I can befriend a Sudanese person. I can't restore all that is lost in Gaza or Israel, but I can share the promise of peace at Yom Kippur, Ramadan, or Easter. I try to find a small thing that I can do with power. So I'd love to just hear more from you on that.
I was talking in that chapter about there are so many things that we can do and so much good that gets done with people who band together and work on a problem. And there are things like in Mother Teresa's convent, you can't change what's going to happen, but you can soften it. You can make it more bearable. And then there are these other things that we can do very little about just because of the nature of what's going on. We can't change some of those things. But I don't want to feel like I'm just a cog in a wheel that these forces are just going to act on me. I want to preserve the ability to act. And the only way I know how to do that is to go small, is to say, all right, of this giant situation, I can only do 1/2 of 1%, but I'm going to do that 1/2 of 1%. And even if it comes down to praying and telling God, I cannot change the situation. I've tried. I don't have the ability to do anything, but I know that you can. And I'm asking in my faith for you to bless in whatever's the most appropriate way these people that I can't reach. And I can't count the times that I have had to take something in prayer to God and just say, I've done everything I can do, and now I'm counting on you. That scripture in James that says I'll quote it poorly, but the prayer of a righteous person availeth much. I believe in that. I trust in that. And so for people of faith, whatever our faith is, when we energize our trust in God, when we activate it, I feel that He pours out blessings. He may not stop the war. He may not, he could, but he may not because he chooses to let us live with the consequences of the things that we're doing. But I know he blesses people individually. And when we ask, there's a power in that asking. And so when that man at the Salvation Army, he said, God bless you. I felt that go into my heart.
Mm.
And I wanted to bless him back. And for people of faith who are doing everything they can and then trusting in God to make up the difference, I believe there's real power in that. And so it may be the ultimate going small that is the ultimate going big. I don't
It's
know.
the biggest big, right?
The biggest of
I
it
made a
all.
note of that. Little bits of dignity and divinity, right? And I think it's little bits of dignity, this back and forth. If I could just end before I have
Yeah.
you and April end, just going on that very theme. I won't, so let me just do one more plug promo for the book. Like, if you're listening or watching this, you do need to get this book. It has so many great principles and stories. It'll reach your heart. I actually forgot to like mention the subtitle as well, how everyday humanitarians are changing the world. It's doing the small. It's reaching into the small, the local. And as you're thinking about this as a listener, again, think about where you could start. Something simple, something small, something local. And I'll just highlight maybe something without giving away this story because I want to pique their interest. I want them to read this
So many
story.
more stories
Oh,
in
there's so
here.
many stories. There's 93 I've heard. Um, there's a story, and I'm sure I think it's on your mom's side, not the Eubank line, but like the influence and like the meaning to your family of the Salvation Army. And she shares a story that has to do with her great grandmother Agnes, and how that story, that experience, and the help that was given in a small local way has trickled down now 4+ generations. And every time Eubank or whatever your mom's maiden name was up that line sees a Salvation Army donation area, there's a personal connection, right? And I get a little emotional because as you're listening to this, I encourage you to think about one place where you could give, or no, where you have been blessed, you or your parents or grandparents, and maybe start there. Because that one person taking a local delivery route wherever your great grandmother lived to deliver that case of whatever it was, I won't say, that made all the difference, right? That person that day probably didn't think they were doing anything that impressive, but it stayed in family legacy across generations. It's created a huge affinity toward this organization to continue doing good. It's had that ripple effect. And I'm getting all emotional because that's what I do. But there's a similar organization in my family that I feel the same way because of something that happened up our line. So if you're listening, you can't think of anything, read the 50 ideas that'll jumpstart you, or think through your own family tree, your own heritage. Where has your family, where have your people been blessed? How was it and where could you give back? So I don't know. I just want to say thank you. I'll stop talking and let you and April finish the conversation while I pull myself together. But if you're listening to this podcast and you have a chance to look up Sharon Eubank online, she has some incredible messages, speeches, and talks that she's given that teach these and other principles that are just incredible. April and I have just loved listening to them and learning from her. So for my part, thank you so much for making and taking time to be with us. It has been a real pleasure. So.
Thank you, Eric. That was more generous than I deserved.
What is your hope with this book as you wrote it? And now I know you're doing so many promotions. You've got to need a nap. Yeah, with all the promotions you're doing, what is your hope?
I might end with this hope that in all the doing that we're trying to do, and so many of us are so busy, we're tired, we're busy, we've got all these things going. In some ways, I want to say to people, when you're multiplying, don't forget to replenish. Don't forget to charge up yourself. I don't feel bad when I plug my phone in every night. I don't feel bad putting gas in my car. Why would I feel guilty or bad about taking the time to replenish? And sometimes our relationships are the greatest way for us to replenish. Being out in nature, being with people we really care about, and we can still be serving them even at that same time. But in all of our multiplying, I don't want to forget about replenishing. That it's how the work works. And when God sets up His work, He builds in all of these replenishing little moments. There's a Sabbath, there's a holiday, there's a jubilee, there's a year of forgiveness,
Right.
and those are things that He knows we need. And maybe I would just say that if you don't know where to start, if the 50 prompts in the back of the book don't get you, and you go to get on Just Serve and you don't know what to do, um, go to the God that you believe in and just say, show me what I can do for you that would be meaningful to you. And you'll be amazed at what comes into your circle. Every day, something will come into you and say, I saw that, God. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then when you do those things, when you respond to that one thing, you're in a relationship with God. You're helping His children in a way that brings power into your life, power into their lives. And to me, that's the ultimate meaning of our lives. That's what I want the very most. It's replenishing and it's giving at the same time. So I hope people have a wonderful experience. And if you do, write to me on social media. Let me know what happened. I'd love to hear more.
Well, and real quick, we'll actually put in the show notes as well. You have some hashtags in the back of the book, and we might actually put that into our community. Those hashtags, as you're doing some of these types of serviceable things in your life, share those, and yeah, tag Sharon, like kind of like make it so Sharon, and we can kind of see that. That would be a lot of fun.
Um, okay, so now that we've done this interview, I'm hopeful that the whole community knows why you're like my favorite person. Why I feel like I'm the little virtual fan club president or one of your best friends. But here's the thing. I was looking back through my dream journals and all my vision boards, and your name has been in there since I think
A
2018.
lot of times.
In fact, I took a little picture on one of my
I've heard.
for those listening to the audio, it's a big like soup, a big pot of soup, and it says collaborate with charities. This has been on my vision board. And then I have a little stick figure that says Sharon Eubank right there next to it. Because you have been just one of those voices. I heard you speaking at like a church conference years ago. And as soon as I heard your voice, I said, who is this? Like, this is a voice that I want to learn from. I need to like study her and be mentored and learn from her because you just have such a way of sharing your love for others and in such an approachable way where you don't have an ego. You're genuinely there to be a help in the world. And I admire you so much. And I just so appreciate your book, your work. I know you're busy and have so much going on. So I'm like, I'm not going to get in her way, but I am cheering her on. We are here. Anything we could do to support you and to extend your love in any way. But thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you both, April and Eric, for this idea of the Learn to Become community. I think it puts people in a position to be active, and it's been so interesting to see people in the community, what they're interested in. I'm really grateful for the work you do.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, we'll close out, but thanks so
Yay.
much.
Thanks again.
I hope that you loved this episode as much as I did. I actually went back and listened to it twice after Eric and I recorded it, and I got something new from it every time. This has genuinely been a life-shaping experience for me, and I hope that you feel the same. Now, if you did love the podcast, we have a couple of timely options for you so you can go deeper and help us spread the word about this amazing book. Now, of course, if you're listening to this episode long after it went live, please go and get Sharon's book, and you'll be so glad that you did. And then check our show notes page for any updates or extensions on our special giveaway. It's learndobecome.com/episode 305. But if you're listening right when this goes live in October or November of 2025, there are two things you'll want to know. So first, our Arise Community Workshop for October is based on this book. And you can jump in with a 60-day free trial at learndobecome.com/arise. It is a party every month. Number two, we've set up a special fundraiser match and giveaway. And the one we're running right now ends November 16th, 2025. So come to the show notes page, learndobecome.com/episode 305, and all the details are there. But I want to tell you a little bit about it. So first we decided, wouldn't it be fun to donate to a favorite charity for everyone who purchases a copy of Sharon's book? So all you have to do is come to our show notes page, click on the form we have there, and you just tell us, I bought Sharon's book. We're going to trust you, okay? And for every book that you buy for yourself or for a friend, Eric and I will donate $20 up to $5,000 to Mentors International. This is an amazing charity. I spoke about it in the podcast that builds the kinds of networks Sharon was talking about, and it trains and supports entrepreneurs worldwide to lift themselves out of poverty. It's actually working. We've worked with this organization for years and even visited their offices in the Dominican Republic and Kenya. We love supporting what they do, and we thought this would be a fun way to do good while also promoting an amazing book. So you get to have an amazing book and share an amazing book, and you'll have a special donation made in your honor by Learn to Become. We're also doing a giveaway, though, with prizes for you that you could win, like favorite book bundles, Amazon gift cards to help you with your service, free programs from Learn to Become. We'll have annual Arise memberships and our STEP programs we're giving away. And we even have a one-on-one coaching session with a member of Team Learn Do Become, you can't get this anywhere else. So if you want a member of Team Learn Do Become to sit down with you and help you work through your system, your routines, your weekly review, any of that, then you can potentially win that as well. And there are several ways to join this giveaway. You can either buy Sharon's book, but we have other options where no purchase is necessary, like listening to this podcast and taking action by doing service for another person. So you already just listened. If you go and put that into action, you can report back, and that's an entry. We also have options where you can share this podcast episode with friends via text or email or social media, and you can enter over and over and over again. So come do it. Increase your chances of winning one of the prizes. And we would just love for you to be a part of it. Eric and I love creating win-win-wins, and we thought, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be fun to create some energy here at Learn Do Become where we can promote Sharon's book, help people read something that's amazing, donate to Mentors International, build some fun in the community, and all work together to be able to do good. So learndobecome.com/episode 305 has all the details and the form for the giveaway. Thanks again for being with us. We can't wait to see how this amazing community will continue to impact the world for good as we move forward. Okay, love you so much. We'll see you soon at learndobecome.com.